Hi, I was a doctor in Perth for 53 years, first of all in hospitals, and then as a family doctor for many years in the suburbs of Perth, where I did all the things that family doctors did a long time ago. Helped to bring 800 babies into the world, did a lot of tonsillectomies, appendectomies, vasectomies, broken bones, cuts, and had many consultations, home and hospital visits. Sometimes did 10 home visits in a day, because in those days not many families had 2 cars, and a lot of families had a lot of kids. 4 was standard, 3 you were a piker, 5 or 6 was not unusual, so it was pretty difficult for mum to take the kids to the surgery, so we did a lot of home visits. And that was interesting and also a bit wearing. Altogether, in the 53 years, I had 500,000 consultations, home and hospital visits. In the late 1990s, we had a terrible epidemic of heroin addiction, and people were dying everywhere, especially young people, from heroin overdoses. So I thought I'd better find out about heroin, and I started to work 10 hours a week in an addiction clinic that was 99% heroin. And I wanted to know what caused addiction, because in health you always want to know the causes, because if you know the causes, it's easier to get people better, and if you fix the causes, they're far less likely to relapse. But nobody seemed to know what caused addiction. Some addiction workers would say things like, "Oh, they're just dickheads chasing highs," but they looked sick to me. And I went to all the addiction clinics in Perth and Sydney and couldn't find a single addiction worker who knew what caused addiction or thought that they should know what caused addiction. But I thought I should know what caused addiction. And then one day in the addiction clinic where I was working 10 hours a day, I saw 15 heroin addicts and 5 of them had ADD. And it was clear to me that the ADD is what had caused their addiction. There was some confusion, and a lot of people thought that the addiction caused the mental health problems. Well, of course, addiction doesn't help mental health problems, it makes them worse, and sometimes it causes new ones. But basically, I knew that these people with ADD had had unhappy childhoods, had done poorly at school, were often problem children who got into trouble a lot, got distressed, left school early, and if they weren't diagnosed and treated for their ADD, to get relief from their distress, they often went on to drugs, street drugs, of all kinds, of all kinds. But it was clear that the substance abuse started in the teens or 20s or 30s due to the distress of ADD, ADHD, and also one of the 3 main characteristics of ADD is impulsivity. ADD people are very impulsive, so they're sitting ducks, easy targets for drug dealers. They just have to say, "Oh, try this," and they try it. Even if their friends have become addicts and some of them have died, they're just impulsive, and they just take the heroin or the alcohol or the ice or whatever is offered to them. So then, once I found that about a third, and in 1 year I treated 700 heroin addicts, and 230 approximately of them had ADD, ADHD, mostly undiagnosed and none treated. And they were a mess, Very distressed people. Because the clinic where I was working 10 hours a week wasn't interested in causes, I started my own clinic, and I had my own addiction clinic for 5 years, in which I treated 5,000 addicts in 40,000 consultations. And what I did was called dual diagnosis. Dual diagnosis treatment is diagnosing and treating the mental health disorders at the same time as treating the addictions. And that worked so much better. If someone had become an addict because they had terrible anxiety, I still remember a young man in his mid-20s who used to drink 6 litres of wine a day. When we treated his severe anxiety, over a period of time he gradually managed to reduce his alcohol and to become addiction free and to have his anxiety fairly well controlled. And that made a great difference to the success rate. The success rate, just putting everyone on methadone and doing nothing about their mental health, was very poor, very poor. And there was a special problem in Perth, I don't know, it probably exists in other places as well, but in the 1970s they separated mental health treatment from addiction treatment. So there were 2 kinds of clinics. There was mental health clinics and separate addiction clinics. And the mental health clinics just refused to see addicts. If you were an addict or an alcoholic, they just wouldn't see you. And the addiction clinics did nothing about mental health. I had to sit in to be taught how to treat addicts. What I really learned was how not to treat addicts. And I saw that people with obvious, quite severe mental illness problems, some of which could have been treated fairly easily, just nothing was done. So they had great difficulty getting off their addiction. Most didn't get off their addiction. Well, all that happened was they became addicted to methadone instead of being addicted to heroin. And later they become addicted to another medicine which wasn't as bad as methadone, Subutex, but it's addictive. It's about as addictive as heroin. So they didn't become addiction free, they just became medicine addicts and dependent on health carers instead of being street drug addicts dependent on drug dealers, which was probably a bit better, but it wasn't what people really needed and wanted. So realizing that a third of the heroin patients were ADD, I went carefully into the past history, right back to the childhood and infancy, the parents, the brothers and sisters, the family, the home, the particular neighbourhood, the schools they went to. And there were no perfect mothers, no perfect fathers, no perfect homes, no perfect families, no perfect neighbourhoods, no perfect schools. Everybody had some suffering and damage in childhood, and the ones who suffered badly very often ended up getting relief from street drugs, and the street drugs were all addictive. So what did I find? I found that the commonest problem was worry, anxiety problems, general anxiety, social phobia, panic attacks, obsessive compulsive disorder, all sorts of phobias. Then there was sleep disorders. One of my patients claimed that he only slept about 6 hours a week, and he got so fatigued and confused, and that was early on, and I didn't know what to do to help him, and he ended up suiciding. The third thing was major depression, a lot of major depression, and a lot of people with major depression resorted to alcohol and to other drugs to get relief. And then ADD, ADHD, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and something that didn't seem to have a name, which I gave a name of IAD, which is irritability anger disorder. There was a lot of domestic violence and a lot of anger, and that commonly resulted in people calming themselves with alcohol or other drugs and ending up being an addict. And there was another thing that I gave a name to, which was PTEF, post-traumatic evil focus. That was people that had something terrible happen to them, like childhood sexual abuse that they couldn't cope with. So to take their mind off that problem, they focused on the faraway evils like the CIA and Guantanamo Bay, so I called that PTEF. People really suffered very badly with mental health illnesses, and there was never going to be enough people to help all the people who needed help with mental illnesses. So many of them got help on the streets from drug dealers and became addicts. So what were we going to do about that? What I realized was that the problem was that the tools used in mental health had big weaknesses. There were only two tools, or two main tools. One was medicines and the other was talk therapy or psychotherapy or counseling. And the problem with medicines was so many of them were addictive. The people who would benefit from taking non-addictive medicines that gave them relief and got better so they could stop taking the medicine were in conflict with the people who make medicine. The people who make medicine just want to sell as much medicine as possible, and they increase their sales in two ways. First of all, they make the medicines addictive. So almost all the medicines for anxiety disorders, the commonest mental health problem, and sleep disorders are addictive. Originally the barbiturates, and then the benzodiazepines like Valium, Seropax, Mogadon, Xanax, and also Ambience and Stilnox. And they also made the medicines slow acting. The medicines were nearly all tablets or capsules, and when you swallow a tablet or a capsule, it takes half an hour to go half an hour to an hour to go right down your gut and start to be absorbed and start to work. It takes half an hour to an hour to start to work, and 1 to 2 hours to start to work strongly. And that's just too slow for many people with mental health disorders and for people who get cravings for addictive substances. So that means that those people, to prevent the onset of mental health distresses or of addictive craving, have to take the medicine 2 or 3 times a day, every day, whether they need it or not, which of course is what the pharmaceutical industry wants them to do. But I discovered that if I ground the tablets up into powder and people dropped the powder on their tongue and sucked it, didn't swallow it, and it was absorbed through their tongue, it started to work in 5 minutes. Your tongue is pink or red because the blood vessels are so close to the surface, and if you sprinkle the powders, thousands of tiny granules on your tongue and suck it, it gets into your bloodstream in 5 minutes and starts to give you relief in 5 minutes and give you strong relief in 10 to 15 minutes. And that's fast enough to prevent bad attacks of mental distress and to greatly reduce the craving for addictive substances. Also, I found that if the powder medicine was made very tasty, people would develop taste conditioning, and then their medicine would start to work in seconds as soon as they tasted it. You drop it on your tongue and you taste it, and a few minutes later you start to get better. Your body connects those two things, and before long you develop taste conditioning. You may have heard of Pavlov's dog conditioning, similar sort of thing. Then as soon as you taste the medicine, you get a placebo effect, and a placebo effect is a real effect. It's not a make-believe effect. So people could start to get relief from their mental distress or their craving in seconds. And to aid that, I designed and had pocket powder medicine dispensers made like this, so they would carry the powder medicine in their pocket like that. If they started to feel anxious or to have any mental distress, and they had the right powder in their powder dispenser in the pocket, they could just whiz it out and drop it on their tongue, even while driving or wherever, in seconds, and start to get relief very quickly. And that made a great difference, because when you stop a craving, you weaken it. And when you stop a mental health distress, you weaken it a little bit. Mental distresses are all, in a way, bad habits. What happens is our brain is so busy that it has got to do so many things that it saves itself time and effort by turning anything we do a lot of into a habit. It makes the underlying brain and nerve electrical triggers and messages and brain and cell tissue and blood chemical triggers and messages stronger and stronger until they become automatic, and that happens without the brain having to spend much time on it, and your brain focuses on what's difficult, what's new and what's changing. But what you've had a lot of times, whether it's a good feeling like a smile or a bad feeling like a panic attack, it just gets stronger the more often you've had it. But that those triggers and messages weaken if when they start, they're weakened or delayed or stopped. That weakens them, helps to break the habit. So to overcome, so that's medicines. The other thing is talk therapy. Talk therapy had two weaknesses. One is it's very slow. It takes you an hour with a new patient to come to grips with all their problems and to make a diagnosis and to explain it to them and to decide what the treatment would. And you need to see them once a week for half an hour, 3/4 of an hour. That's very time consuming and slow. And it's expensive, because to be a therapist you need at least a 4-year Bachelor of Psychology degree, and a lot of psychologists have a 7-year PhD, and all psychiatrists have to have a 6-year basic general medicine degree, some general medicine experience, and then 3, 4 or 5 years of postgraduate psychiatric training. So those people, they're all very intelligent, and they've all done long courses, and they have to be paid well. So talk therapy is costly. It's slow and it's costly. So what are we going to do about that? I realized that there were 3 things that were needed. First of all, we needed better tools. We needed a complete range of better tools. Secondly, people had to be able to use those tools themselves. They had to do as much as they could for themselves, for 2 reasons. One, that's better. It's better if you can do things yourself as soon as you need to, whenever you need to, whenever you've got the time. And it gives the therapists more time to help the people who can't help themselves. So firstly, more tools. Secondly, self-help. Thirdly, start early. Most problems are much simpler and easier to deal with when they first start. And the longer they go before they get treated, the more complicated they get. Problems cause more problems, which cause more problems, and they get more complicated and more ingrained and harder to deal. So if someone who develops a problem doesn't get treatment for 10 years, and by that time they've got other mental health problems, and they may have family problems, marriage problems, accommodation problems, employment problems, all sorts of problems added on, then they just need a lot of treatment, and they're never going to get a lot of that, as much treatment as they need. So most of those people never get better. So more tools, self-help, getting in early. Fantastic if you can do it on your phone as soon as a problem starts. So the tools, I over a 27-year period developed 7 tools. The first tool, no, not exactly in this order, but videos. Instead of having to explain things over and over and over many times a day to different people, I made videos which they could watch, and they could watch them over and over till they got it, and that was a big step forward. Then we had websites. I had a website called mentalhealthvideos.com, which had a list of all the videos in it with links, but also a lot of information about different things. But people found it too long, so now we've got a second website for the people who want to go fast. which is just called smilefixit.com, and on one page or a page and a half you can see everything, and you can just tap what's of interest to you and go straight to it. So videos, websites, then an app. I started with a checklist, a 20 question checklist, which one of my assistants would do with the patients before I saw them. So when I saw them, I could get to the bottom of their problem much quicker, which helped me to cope, because I never had a waiting list. I saw everybody who came. We gave them appointments if they wanted appointments, and we preferred that way. But if they came without an appointment, they might have to sit around for an hour or two to wait, but we'd squeeze them in. And what we found was that 10 or 15 minutes with a person on the day they wanted help was far more effective than half an hour or three-quarters of an hour weeks later, at the time that didn't suit them, or when they weren't in that frame of mind. So getting in early, but the checklist was still cumbersome, and eventually we realized that apps were coming in. There were apps for everything, and we realized we had to have an app for mental health and addiction. So an app is a lot of work, and that's a lot of money. But about a year ago, we managed to finish an app which is called the Mental Fixit app. The Mental Fixit app, which you can find at smilefixit.com. At first, the Mental Fixit app had 38 questions, which covered all the important aspects of mental health and addiction. But then, and you think that might take a long time, but for each question there was 3 answers, and you just had to pick your choice of the 3 answers and tap on it. So it was just tap. So you could go through the 38 questions in 10 minutes. Tap, 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 tap. And soon you didn't get asked some of the questions, because if you tap the not a problem answer twice, then that question didn't get asked, or only got asked every 4th time. So the number of questions reduced, but that was still longer than what people wanted. So we reduced the number of questions to 19, which they could start doing in 5 minutes and soon do in 4 minutes or 3 minutes. But we're now working on a revision of the Mental Fixit app. It'll be probably 2 months before we've got it finalised, but you'll be able to do the app in 2 minutes. And it asks the question in a different way. It asks what you want, because one of the things that I learnt was it was much more helpful to ask people, do you want to be calm and relaxed, rather than have you got an anxiety problem. If we asked them, have you got an anxiety problem, and we decided they had an anxiety problem or some other mental illness, that was a bit of a bummer. I mean, a lot of people were happy to know that what they had that had been confusing and upsetting them had a name, and that a lot of other people had the same problem, but it was still better to ask them what they wanted and needed, because that clarified in their mind what was missing, what they needed, what they wanted, what they had they wanted to get rid of, and that helped them to start to do things themselves. So that was the app. Also, a new app, a new version of the Mental Fixit app will have questions to do with transgenerational trauma, because one of the things we've learned is that it's a mistake for us to think that everybody is an individual and that only some people have mental health problems. Everybody suffers in childhood. There are no perfect mothers, no perfect fathers, no perfect families, no perfect neighbourhoods, no perfect schools. Everybody has some suffering and some problems, and they're connected to what happens in the family. Often someone has a problem that they got because their mother or their father or their grandmother or their grandmother had a problem. So the new version of the Mental Fix-It app will cover transgeneration trauma as well. So the 7 tools were videos, and the videos, people stopped looking at long videos and we had to make 1-minute videos. 12 years ago the first video was about 10 minutes and it got 10,000 viewings in 9 months, and we made lots more 10-minute videos, but people over the years stopped looking at 10-minute videos and they just watched 1-minute videos on TikTok type videos. So we had to make 1-minute videos, and each 1-minute video can only cover one thing, so we needed lots of 1-minute videos. Started with 50 and ended up with 100. And one of the valuable things that the app does is it tells you which videos will help you most with your particular problems. So when you do the Mental Fix-It app, just when you tap your answer to the last question, you get an immediate report, and the immediate report tells you 4 things. It tells you which 6 of our 1-minute videos, of our 100 1-minute videos, will help you most with your particular problems. It tells you which medicines are most likely to help you. Of course, you have to see a doctor to get a prescription for the medicines, but a lot of people like to consult Dr. Google and do some research on the medicines that may help them before they actually see their doctor and get the medicine. Thirdly, it gives them a list of everything that they have tapped as a problem. Everything they tap as a problem has a score, which depends on how important that particular thing is and how bad their problem is. So major depression and schizophrenia are very serious, and if you've got them to a bad degree, then you get a score of about 15. But if what you've got is mild or moderate anxiety or mild or moderate sleep disorder, the score might be 4 for that. And the app adds up all your scores for all your answers each time you do the app and gives you a total score. And we recommend that you do the app check quite regularly, because every time you read a question and you say, what do I want? What do I need? You get clearer. And the clearer you get about what you want and what you need by repetition, the more likely you are to get it. So the app then puts your total scores in a graph. So as soon as you look at your report, you can see instantly the graph of your total scores, and that tells you instantly whether you're getting better, your scores are getting better, or they're not getting better, or whether they're getting worse. And that tells you whether the treatment you're on is right or you need to change the treatment. It also tells you whether something that you did yesterday or last night made your score better or made your score worse. So it helps you, it guides you in lifestyle things. You get clearer and clearer what helps you and what makes you worse. So the total score graph is very valuable. And that graph goes on, so you can look back and over a year or years and see how your scores. Oh, you went to Bali and had 3 weeks lying on the beach, your scores got much better. Or you started a new job and it was dangerous and it was stressful and your scores got a lot worse. Better give that job away. So yeah, so 7 tools: videos, websites, the app. And there's live streaming, which is what I'm doing now, because a lot of people like to learn as much as they can by actually watching live streaming. And although I spend a lot of time getting the 1-minute videos exactly right, sometimes revise the text 20 times so we don't miss anything out, but we don't exceed the 1-minute limit. But the live streaming is more informal, and a lot of people like to do that. I've been cautioned this time and initially that some people would find some of my live streaming distressing, but as I say, nothing that's just meant to spectacularize or distress people. Everything, some of it pretty grim, is to help people, because the suffering that some people go through is terrible. Yeah, so live streaming is the 4th one. The 5th one is the powder medicine. The 6th one is the pocket powder dispensers. And the 7th one is heartbeat meditation aids. This is my heartbeat meditation aid. Meditation is very valuable for people with mental distress, and it's very valuable for most people. Most people have some stress in your life, and meditation helps you to calm down, relax, have a break from your stress that makes you feel refreshed and happier and stronger. And it develops parts of your brain that makes you your mental health better and your life more comfortable and better. So in meditation, what you do is you focus on something that allows you to forget all your stresses and pressures. It's usually either a word or your breathing. So the meditation teacher will say, use this word, just say this word over again, and forget about everything else. Of course, at first, it's pretty hard to forget everything else, and you say again 5 times, and then you start to think about your problems. But gradually, you learn to focus on the words, and you learn to have a break, to take a little rest, a little holiday from all your stresses. Or other meditation teachers tell you to focus on your breathing. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, and forget about everything else. Well, focusing on your breathing is the best thing to do in the end, but it's not very mind-grabbing, and it's pretty hard to do at first. And the people who would most benefit from meditation, who most need meditation, have a lot of difficulty focusing on their breathing, and a lot of them never learn to meditate. So a few years ago, I got a cheap stethoscope. I thought the best thing to focus on is your heartbeat. So I cut the stethoscope short. This is the listening part. I put it down under my clothes on the upper left chest, on the skin of the upper left chest, and you can hear your heart beating loud, strong, clear. It's very interesting. It's mind-grabbing, and it really helps you to switch off from all your stresses. So do that for a couple of months, and then you can focus on your breathing. If you want one of those, we can send you one for $25 plus postage. I've got another tool coming. It's a fruit powder dispenser. We're going to try to beat the epidemics of diabetes, obesity, and blocked artery heart attacks and strokes and black toes and so on by getting people to carry fruit powder in a dispenser in their pocket and take that instead of chocolate and lollies and sugar and all that sort of thing. Because what's happened in the last 100 years is instead of all that heavy physical work and walking that our grandparents did, we now sit at a desk and we've all got cars or access to public transport, so we only burn half the calories we used to, but there's so much more food available, and sugar is a gold mine for the food manufacturers, so they put sugar in everything. As many foods and drinks as possible, and sugar is cheap for them, and people love the sweet taste, and sugar is addictive. Do a ChatGPT search on the addictiveness of sugar, and you'll find it's very addictive. And it's easy to use, easy to transport, easy to store, so they put it in everything, and that's causing epidemics of obesity and diabetes and blocked arteries in the wealthier nations like the US, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and it's coming. There's a lot of diabetes now in India, and my Chinese friends tell me that there's more and more obesity developing in China. So that's the 8th tool. There's a 9th one as well coming, but there's a lot of things to do, so it'll take a while to get them. What I learned over all those years was that the 5 most important things to have a good life were, first of all, mental health. To be mentally healthy is such a great benefit in having a good life, and mental ill health is such a bummer. Secondly, good relationships. Humans need humans. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived together in little groups. There were no brick walls, and everybody was very close, and they had to be close because they had to protect one another from the wild animals, because they lived in nature, and so did the wild animals. So they mostly lived in groups with a minimum of 30 people for protection from wild animals, and a maximum of 150 people, because there had to be enough food, natural growing food, within walking distance, and if there was more than 150 people, they couldn't get out there to get the food and get back before it got dark because they had no torches, no electric lights. So people, our whole chemistry and how we functions best when we have good relationships. Loneliness is as damaging as 15 cigarettes a day. Lonely people get older and sicker earlier and die younger. I don't think living to a great age is necessarily that valuable, but I definitely think keeping your driver's license, staying out of a wheelchair and being able to live at home, not in a nursing home, you want to do that as long as possible. So the 5 things are mental health, good relationships, a strong immune system. We produce over 20 chemicals in our brain called endorphins, which manage our immune system. Our immune system is white cells and antibodies and chemicals in every part of our body that fight infections, allergies, inflammation, autoimmune diseases and cancers. A very sad case in my family was a woman who had many children and then died at 42 from cancer when some of the children were still little. You only die at 42 of cancer if your immune system is weak. So mental health, good relationships, strong immune system, and the habit of smiling. Smiling is the fastest way to feel better. The fastest way to feel better is to smile. And why is that? It's because we've got in our brain about 25 chemicals that make us feel happy, make us feel good. There's the endorphins that manage the immune system, which also stop pain or reduce pain and reduce stress. And there's over 20 endorphins. And there's dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin and noradrenaline, which are other chemicals in our brain that make us feel good. And we've known about those chemicals making us feel good for a while, but now we know with the imaging techniques and so on, they've been able to prove that when we smile and when we laugh, we increase the production of happy chemicals. So developing the habit of smiling as often as possible, the habit of saying when something is good, it's perfect, and smiling. And the 5th thing is no addictions. And of course, addictions are a disaster. Addictions are terrible. And they're 4th stage mental health disorders. And if you've got good mental health, good relationships, strong immune system, don't get sick, and you smile a lot, you're not going to get an addiction. You're not going to. But if you've got bad mental health, bad relationships, you get sick often because your immune system is not very good and you never smile, you are going to be a sitting duck for the people who will sell you addictive substances or addictive habits. And addiction, or not having an addiction, is the 5th thing. Well, I think that's enough for today. And just to say again, I'm sorry if some of the things I talk about are distressing. I wish they didn't exist, but they do exist. and people need to know about them and what causes them and how to fix them. So I sometimes talk about them. But yes, I do the live streaming 4 times a week. I've been doing it Wednesday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday at 7 p.m. Perth time, which is 9 p.m. Sydney and Melbourne time, which is 7 a.m. New York time and 4 a.m. Los Angeles time. So I'm going to start to do some of those sessions on Sunday morning, maybe Monday morning, because sometimes 30% of our viewers come from North America, US and Canada and the UK, and those times are very user unfriendly for them. So I'm going to change to times which are friendly for them and perhaps friendly for a different group of people in Australia. Anyway, so we'll finish now and be back again tomorrow night, Saturday night.